Something changed in your body this week. Not your mind, not your feelings, your body. You've been noticing it in small ways. The way you got to a moment that would have wrecked you a few months ago, and instead of the floor dropping out, there was just nothing. Quiet. Like someone turned a dial and the signal that used to come through so loud it disrupted everything went to somewhere low and distant and manageable. You stood there waiting for the wave, and the wave did not come. Not a small wave, not a delayed wave, just no wave. And you're not sure how to feel about the fact that you are not sure how to feel. It is strange to look at something that used to hold enormous weight and feel it sitting lighter. Strange in a way that is almost suspicious. You have been in this so long and felt it so acutely and been so oriented toward the depth of what this connection is, that the arrival of what feels like distance or flatness or a kind of internal quiet where the acute feeling used to be registers not as relief but as something closer to alarm. Like maybe something is wrong. Like maybe you should be feeling more. Like the absence of the familiar ache means something has broken inside you that was not supposed to break. It has not broken. What has happened is something entirely different from breaking, and entirely different from what you were probably told emotional numbness means. And understanding what is actually happening in your nervous system right now is the information that changes how you hold this week. If that is landing close to where you are, leave a like and subscribe so you do not miss what comes next. Drop "my body knows" in the comments to anchor this. Because what your nervous system is doing right now is not absence. It is intelligence. Leave it below. There is something I want to put in front of you before we go further. Because the experience you're inside right now, this specific kind of quiet where there used to be so much noise, can feel impossible to navigate without a map that is actually yours. Not someone else's general guidance about twin flame stages. Not a video that could apply to anyone. Your specific chart. Your specific journey. Your specific moment. A twin flame union personal reading is built from your birth information alone. Your name. Your date of birth. Your time of birth. Your place of birth. And from those coordinates, what I open is the actual blueprint of your connection. Where you are in this journey right now. Not where it looks like from the outside. Where the energetic and karmic truth of it actually is. What is moving beneath the surface right now. What your soul contract with this person genuinely contains. What the universe is building in the space between you that you cannot yet see from where you are standing. You receive a personal audio reading delivered straight to your inbox and a detailed PDF report to return to as the journey continues to unfold. The link is in the description. If you are ready to stop navigating this entirely by feel, it is there for you. Now let us go into what is actually happening. April 4th, 2026. The sky right now is not loud. We are sitting between significant events in a kind of energetic corridor, days past the full moon in Libra that illuminated the relational truth of everything, and days before the coming pressure of Sun square Jupiter and the building energy of the Mars conjunct Neptune that perfects in mid-April. This corridor has a specific quality. After illumination comes integration. After something is seen, the system needs time to absorb what the seeing revealed. And the sky right now is providing exactly that. A pause, a held breath, a space between the revelation and whatever comes next. Venus is in Taurus, where she is at home and unhurried, and she is moving through a square to Pluto that perfected yesterday and is still in orb today. Venus square Pluto does not do small things. It reaches down into the deepest layer of what we value, what we love, what we are attached to at the level below conscious choice, and it applies pressure there. Not destructive pressure, transformative pressure. The kind of pressure that asks whether what you are holding is still in its original form or whether it has been changed by everything you have been through. What you love has been changed by what you have been through, not diminished, not made less real, changed. And your nervous system, which has been tracking this connection and this journey at a level far below your conscious mind, has been quietly reorganizing around what is true now rather than what was true at the beginning. The emotional flatness you are noticing is not a symptom of something going wrong. It is evidence of that reorganization. Your system is taking stock. Saturn and Neptune are sitting close together in the early degrees of Aries. This conjunction has been building across these past months, and it is one of the most significant long-cycle energies of this entire era. Saturn, which demands reality, which insists on what is solid and durable and actually true beneath what we wish were true, sitting alongside Neptune, which governs the dissolution of illusions and the deepening of spiritual understanding. These two together do not allow comfortable fantasy. They do not allow you to maintain a version of reality that feels better than the actual reality. They insist gently but comprehensively on what is real. And what is real for you this week is that your nervous system has reached a threshold, a place that the language of twin flame content rarely describes accurately, because it does not fit neatly into the categories of hope or despair or progress or regression. Your body went quiet, and your body went quiet because it is doing something important. The framework that describes what is happening in you right now comes not from spiritual language, but from neuroscience, specifically from the work of Stephen Porges, who spent decades developing what is called Polyvagal theory. And what Polyvagal theory reveals about your nervous system's current state is something that changes everything about how you interpret the flatness. Most people understand the nervous system through a two-state model: fight or flight on one side, calm and rested on the other, activated or settled. You either feel things acutely or you feel peaceful. And the assumption underneath most emotional wellness frameworks is that the goal is to move from activation to peace, from the acute feeling states to the regulated, settled state, and that anything in between is a transition point. Porges discovered a third state, and this third state is the one you are in right now. The vagus nerve, which is the primary pathway of the parasympathetic nervous system, has two branches. The ventral vagal branch, which governs the settled, socially engaged, present tense-oriented state, the calm that is also alive, the peace that is also curious, the regulated nervous system that can connect and relate and feel fully and still stay inside its own window. And then there is the dorsal vagal branch, which governs something older and more primal, a state the nervous system enters, not when it is at rest, but when it has been in activation for so long that the system makes a survival decision. When the nervous system has been in prolonged sympathetic activation, which is the technical term for the state of heightened alert that extended separation and sustained grief and the ongoing intensity of the twin flame dynamic produces, when it has been in that state for long enough, the dorsal vagal system engages. And the experience of that engagement from the inside is not pain, not acute emotion, a kind of muting, a dimming, a sense of feeling less. This is not breakdown. This is the most ancient protective mechanism the nervous system has. It is conservation. When the organism has been expending significant energy on emotional and relational vigilance for an extended period and the situation has not resolved, and the resources required to sustain that level of activation are becoming unsustainable, the nervous system makes a decision. It draws the field inward. It reduces the signal that is reaching the surface. It creates a kind of buffer between what is being registered at the deep level and what is available to conscious awareness, not to prevent feeling permanently, to allow the system to recover from an extraordinarily long period of high-intensity activation. Your nervous system has been on alert for a long time, and this week it went into conservation mode. That is not emotional detachment in the psychological sense. That is not giving up in the spiritual sense. That is not the connection becoming less real. That is your body being extraordinarily intelligent about what it needs right now in order to be capable of what comes next. The twin flame journey does something to the nervous system that most accounts of the experience do not fully address. They describe it emotionally, spiritually, psychologically. They talk about the soul-level recognition and the activation and the pattern clearing and the growth. What they rarely talk about is what all of that does to the physical body and the physical nervous system over time. A prolonged twin flame separation is, from the body's perspective, a sustained relational stress event. It does not matter that the love is real. It does not matter that the connection is genuine and deep and unlike anything else you've experienced. The body does not filter its response through the quality of the love. The body responds to what it perceives. And what it perceives, month after month, is a primary attachment figure who is simultaneously present and unavailable, felt and out of reach, real and absent. This is one of the most activating relational experiences the nervous system can have. Not because the love is harmful, because the uncertainty is sustained. The nervous system is built for resolution. It is built to move through stress cycles to completion. You feel the threat. You respond to the threat. The threat resolves. The system returns to baseline. This is the natural rhythm. The nervous system is extraordinarily good at cycling through acute stress. What it is less equipped for, structurally, is chronic uncertainty, the situation that does not resolve, the question that stays open. The person who is felt continuously but whose status in your life does not settle into something the system can orient around. What that prolonged uncertainty does to the body is measurable. Elevated cortisol over extended periods, disruption of sleep architecture, changes in immune function, alterations in the body's relationship to appetite, to temperature regulation, to the basic sensory experience of being in a physical form. The body under prolonged relational stress is working very hard at levels you are mostly not aware of, constantly scanning for signal, constantly monitoring for changes, constantly holding a low-frequency vigilance that does not rest even when you are doing other things. You have been doing that for a long time, and your body has reached the limit of how long it can sustain that level of background activation without interruption. Not the limit of loving him, not the limit of the connection being real. The limit of the biological system's capacity to maintain indefinite vigilance without a break. The dorsal vagal shift that happened this week is the system taking the break it needs. It is not the end of feeling. It is the beginning of restoration. You have been doing this work for a long time, and one of the things that happens in a journey this long is that it becomes nearly impossible to see your own progress from the inside. The days blur. The stages merge. What you have built and healed and shifted over months looks, from inside the experience of it, like nothing moving. The Twin Flame Journey Tracker and Progress Workbook was built specifically for this. 39 pages. An 8-stage journey tracker so you know exactly where you are in this process based on evidence, not based on how you feel on any given difficult day. A synchronicity log so the 11:11 moments, the songs that find you at exactly the right time, the dreams that carry information stop disappearing into the ordinary flow of days. A daily self-love checklist that keeps you at the center of your own story. Weekly reflections that surface the patterns you would miss otherwise. Monthly reviews that show you, laid out in front of you in visible form, how much has actually shifted even when from the inside it felt like standing still. You have been doing the work. This is where you prove it to yourself. The link is in the description. He does not have access to this kind of understanding about what is happening inside you. He does not have language for what the silence from your direction feels like when it arrives differently than it has arrived before. When it arrives not as the silence of someone who is still waiting, still watching the door, still monitoring for signal, but as the silence of someone whose system has moved somewhere he cannot quite locate. He has been calibrating to your energy for a long time, even in the physical distance, even across the silence. His nervous system has been co-regulating to yours in ways that neither of you has consciously managed or chosen. This is one of the most well-documented and least publicly understood aspects of close attachment relationships. The nervous systems of people who have formed primary attachment bonds do not operate independently of each other even when those people are not in contact. They remain in a form of regulatory relationship. What shifts in one nervous system sends information to the other. When your nervous system went into conservation mode this week, when the field drew inward and the surface signal quieted, he felt something shift. He cannot name what he felt. He does not have the framework. But his system registered it as a change in the quality of your presence in the energetic field you have shared since the beginning of this connection. Something changed in the signal. The way you would notice if a sound that had been present in your environment for a very long time suddenly was not there. Not that you were listening for it consciously, but its absence registers precisely because it had been continuous. What his system made of that registration depends on where he currently is in his own arc. For some divine masculines, the dropping of the acute signal from the divine feminine reads as a relief, not because they want the connection less. Because the connection has been activating something in them they have not known how to manage, and when that activation quiets slightly, the immediate response is a kind of exhale. Space. Room to breathe. The irony is that the exhale is not distance. It is the first moment of regulatory capacity he has had in a long time. The first moment he can actually feel his own experience without it being overridden by the intensity of the relational field. For others, it registers as a low alarm. Something changed. The signal he has been unconsciously tracking, that has been present in the background of his experience like a continuous carrier frequency, shifted. And a system that has been oriented toward that frequency does not experience its changing as neutral. It experiences it as information, as something requiring attention. Either way, what is moving in him this week is connected to what has moved in you. Not in the way of cause and effect, in the way of two nervous systems that has been in regulatory relationship for a long time, both being affected by the same underlying shift. The Venus square Pluto that is still in orb today is applying pressure to what he has been holding in his value system. What he has told himself about what he wants, about what he is capable of, about what this connection is, and what it means in the context of his life. Pluto does not allow beautiful, comfortable lies to persist under direct examination. Venus in that square is being asked a question about what is actually valued, what is actually worth holding, what at the deepest level the heart knows is real. His heart knows. He is not yet fully acted from what his heart knows, but the knowing is not in question. There is a specific thing that the spiritual community tends to misread about periods like this. A period of emotional quieting in a twin flame journey tends to get interpreted as one of two things. Either it is the beginning of detachment, the widely discussed state of healthy non-attachment that the divine feminine is supposed to cultivate as part of her healing, or it is a warning sign, evidence that something has gone wrong, that the journey is somehow in jeopardy, that the feeling of the connection going flat means the connection itself is flattening. It is neither of those things. It is what it is, a biological intelligence event. The nervous system has a wisdom that is older than thought, older than the frameworks we use to interpret our experience, older than the spiritual language of twin flames and divine timing and soul contracts. The body has been navigating the conditions of existence for hundreds of thousands of years, long before the conscious mind developed its current capacity to analyze and narrate and interpret. And the body has developed, through that long navigation, a set of responses to prolonged stress that are precisely calibrated to allow the organism to survive and eventually thrive past the most difficult circumstances. The dorsal vagal conservation response is one of those calibrated responses. It is not the body giving up. It is the body making a resource allocation decision. The acute feeling state requires significant energy to sustain. The vigilance, the monitoring, the continuous emotional processing of a situation that is not yet resolved, all of that is metabolically expensive in a very literal sense. The body running those processes at full intensity for an extended period is the body running a very expensive operation. And at some point, the system makes the calculation that those resources need to be redirected toward the work of restoration, of repair, of building back what has been depleted by the sustained activation. The quiet is the building. What is being built during this conservation period is not indifference, it is capacity. The nervous system in conservation mode is not frozen. It is reorganizing. redirecting resources from surface activation to deep restoration, building back the regulatory reserves that sustained activation depletes, preparing the internal infrastructure for the next phase of what this journey requires. This matters enormously for how you hold what you are experiencing. Because if you interpret the quiet as evidence that something is wrong, as evidence that you are losing your feeling for him or your sense of the connection, you will tend to try to counteract it, to reach back into the acute feeling to prove the connection is still real, to generate emotional activation as a way of confirming that you still care. And that reaching backward, that attempt to return to a state the system has moved away from for good biological reasons, interferes with exactly the restorative work the system is trying to do. The quiet is asking you to let it be quiet, not because the love is not real, because the system needs what the quiet provides, because what comes after genuine restoration is not the same flatness, but something qualitatively different, a different kind of presence. Not the hypervigilant presence of someone scanning for signal, the grounded, full-bodied, here in this moment presence of a nervous system that has done its restoration work and returned to a state of genuine availability, available not just to the connection, available to her own life, to the full texture of her own daily experience, to herself in the present tense as a complete and ongoing reality. That presence is what the twin flame journey has always been building toward, not the sustained acute feeling of separation, not the vigilance and the monitoring and the continuous orientation toward something just beyond the current moment. The full, settled, here I am, presence of someone who has come home to herself. Your nervous system is building that home. This week, Porges's research established something that changes how we understand emotional states in the context of close relationships. He called it the window of tolerance, the range of nervous system activation within which a person can feel their feelings, process their experience, stay present to what is happening, and remain in functional contact with themselves and others. Inside the window, everything is available. The full range of emotion, from grief to joy, from fear to love, from the acute feeling of loss to the expansive feeling of connection, all of it is accessible and processable within the regulated state. What prolonged separation does is to narrow that window, not permanently, but over time, sustained relational stress compresses the range of nervous system activation within which you can remain regulated. The window becomes smaller. The experiences that push you out of the window into either overwhelm on the high end or shut down on the low end become more frequent. Things that would not have sent you into activation at the beginning of this journey now do. And the baseline from which you are regulating has shifted lower, meaning the system has less room before it reaches the conservation threshold. What you are experiencing this week is the system reaching and resting at that conservation threshold, not crashing through it, resting at it. The intelligent response of a nervous system that has been narrowed by sustained activation and has reached the place where it can go no further in that direction without beginning the return journey. The return journey is what the quiet is. And the return journey, from the polyvagal perspective, is not a journey you make through effort. It is a journey the system makes when it is given permission to make it, when you stop trying to push yourself back into feeling, when you stop interpreting the quiet as evidence of a problem that needs to be solved, when you allow the conservation response to complete its work without interfering with it. The practical implications of this for how you move through this week are specific. You do not need to feel more to prove the connection is real. The connection does not require your continuous acute feeling to remain true. It exists independent of your current ability to access the feeling of it from the surface of your experience. You do not need to fill the quiet with activity or seeking or reaching out in any direction. The quiet is the activity at the level where the real work of this period is happening. You do not need to perform wellness or pretend to a peace you have not yet arrived at. The system is working. You are not required to narrate it in any particular way. What you are invited to do specifically and practically is the most counterintuitive thing possible: less. Do less with what you are feeling this week. Demand less of your emotional experience. Let the quiet be quiet without rushing to interpret it or fix it or turn it into something it is not yet. The system will do the rest. It always does. When you give it permission. The research on nervous system restoration after prolonged activation describes a pattern that is worth knowing about. Not because the pattern gives you a timeline. It does not. The system moves at its own pace, and the pace is not predictable from the outside. But because knowing what comes after the conservation period changes how you hold being inside it. After the dorsal vagal conservation response completes its restorative work, which happens in its own time and is not something you can speed through, the system returns to ventral vagal engagement, but not the same ventral vagal engagement that existed before the sustained activation. Something different. Something that people who have been through extended periods of this kind of recovery consistently describe as more solid, more their own, more genuinely grounded rather than regulated by effort. The difference is between regulation that requires continuous maintenance, that has to be actively produced by discipline or practice or conscious effort, and regulation that is resting on a deeper foundation. The foundation of a nervous system that has done the work of genuine restoration, that has actually recovered rather than performed recovery, that has rebuilt its resources at the level where they exist before they become conscious feeling or conscious thought, at the level of the body itself. What emerges from that rebuilt foundation is a different quality of presence, a different relationship to the connection and to the journey, not less love. Different love, not less feeling, different feeling. The acute vigilance replaced by something quieter and more solid and in some ways more real, because it is not generated by the fear of losing something. It exists independent of the fear. It does not need the fear to confirm it is real. This is what genuine healing looks like from the inside, in the twin flame journey, at late separation. Not the dramatic before and after. Not the moment of breakthrough where everything suddenly changes. The quiet biological work of a nervous system finding its way back to itself. The slow and mostly invisible rebuilding of the interior infrastructure that the next phase of this journey requires. The next phase requires someone who is genuinely present in her own body, genuinely regulated, genuinely capable of being in the connection without being organized by it or disorganized by it. Someone who has found the ground beneath the feeling and can stand on that ground rather than needing to float in the feeling to know the connection is real. You're building that ground this week, in the quiet. And when you are standing on it, when the system has completed its restoration and returned to genuine ventral vagal engagement, when you are fully present and fully grounded and fully yourself in the way that the sustained activation of this journey has not until now allowed, the dynamic between you shifts, because what the twin flame connection mirrors back is always the current truth of each person's inner state. And when your inner state shifts from vigilance to genuine groundedness, what the mirror reflects back changes. Not because you changed what you want, or what you feel, or what you know is true about this connection, because you stopped organizing your entire nervous system around the uncertainty of whether it will resolve the way you want it to resolve. Because you arrived in yourself, in the present tense, in the body you actually inhabit, in the life you are actually living, not as a waiting room, as the actual territory of your actual existence. That arrival is what the quiet is pointing toward. Your body knows something your mind is still catching up to. Your body knows that what is needed right now is not more feeling, not more reaching, not more analysis or more hope or more vigilance about where the journey is headed. What is needed right now is the return to yourself that the quiet makes possible. Let it be quiet. Trust what your body is doing. Trust that the quiet is not empty. It is full of something you cannot yet feel from the surface of your experience, but that is building, regardless, in the deep architecture of who you are becoming through this. That becoming is real, even in the quiet, especially in the quiet. You are not losing yourself. You are finding yourself, in the only way that kind of finding ever actually happens. Through the body, through the restoration, through the intelligent silence of a nervous system that knows exactly what it needs in order to give you what comes next. And what comes next is worth what the quiet is costing you now.